welcome to a new video and a very special video. We're taking the Cap San Diego from Cuxhaven to Hamburg. Cap San Diego is the largest operational museum cargo ship in the world, and with her we're now sailing from Cuxhaven to Hamburg. Usually she's located as a museum ship in Hamburg, part of the silhouette of the harbor of Hamburg, but here we can see her now in Cuxhaven for around 10 times each year. She is still sailing, she's operational, and now we're taking one of these tours from Cuxhaven to Hamburg. It is the Hamburg Süd Memorial Cruise, and I will tell you a bit more about this later on. Here we can see this beautiful ship in Cuxhaven, and now it's time to board the 159.4 meter long and 21.4 meters wide ship. Once on board, we were gifted a cup. Of course, we could get free coffee all day long. There was a small snack, and all areas of the ship were open for the passengers. Here we can see the lounge and the bar. Usually when the ship is a museum in Hamburg, the lounge and the bar are not accessible. You can just take a look, but you cannot access them. But now they were in use, and even the bar was in use. And we will also see the engine room. We can take a look at the bridge. So it was very interesting. But let's start with a few facts about the Cap San Diego. Part of the Cap San class was built in 1961 and was used until the 1980s. Regular schedules between Germany and South America. She did around 120 round trips until 1981 and was already planned to be scrapped, but the city of Hamburg stepped in and saved her, and now she is a museum ship in the port of Hamburg, also used as a hotel, because she was not only used for freight transport but also for passenger transport. She has a capacity for 12 passengers. For the passengers there was the lounge, the bar, nice cabins, and one of which I already stayed because she's also used as a hotel in Hamburg. And there's also a swimming pool and an outdoor bar. Here we can see the Halunde jet. This is the ferry from Hamburg to the island of Heligoland. And in the meantime we've left Cuxhaven. For the first time the pilots were exchanged. The port pilot of Cuxhaven left and we got our Elbe pilot, which will bring us now almost all the way to the port of Hamburg. In the beginning we are sailing on the mouth of the Elbe, where the river is already extremely wide, mouthing into the North Sea, so it feels like sailing on the ocean. And our ship, with a tonnage of around 10,000 GRT that can reach a speed of 20 knots, is now heading for Hamburg. Of course we're not going with 19 or 20 knots, we're going much slower as the engine is only used around 10 times each year. Of course you're not gonna go full power on such an old preserved engine. Here we can see one of the exhibitions you can visit in Hamburg. They were also open during the cruise, so I took a look at them. But of course the main highlight was at a running engine in the engine room, and that's where we are heading now. Of course, this was very interesting to see a working engine of a ship. Of course, this is a part you cannot usually access on a ship, especially not if it's in use, but here it was possible. Of course, we got some safety instructions like not touching anything, because There are moving parts, there are hot parts, so of course you need to be very careful, but we were allowed to take a look at the engine room, and here we are on the bridge. Also the bridge was open every now and then, not during maneuvers, but otherwise it was possible to see the bridge as well. Of course the bridge was always very crowded, so it was hard to film in there, but for me also the view from the bridge wings was extremely spectacular. Not every day you're gonna get to see the view from the bridge of a cargo ship, especially not of such an old one, so that was very, very interesting and beautiful. In general, it was an amazing feeling to travel on such a ship, because that's very unique to cruise on a freight ship, especially on such an old one, so I can highly recommend doing one of the cruises with a Cap San Diego. There were a little bit of entertainment, there were some announcements about the other ships you can see. There was of course food and drinks on board, and all the exhibitions were open, and of course main entertainment is going into the engine room, going on the bridge and just enjoying sailing on the River Elbe. But of course there was also food, there was a caterer on board, we were offered a South American lunch, because as I said it was a memorial cruise of Hamburg Süd. Hamburg Süd was a German container shipping company, and it was the company that the Cap San Diego belonged to. Unfortunately, the company was sold to Maersk Line in 2017. From 2023 on, the name Hamburg Süd wasn't used anymore. The name and the livery were phased out in favor of the Maersk brand, and 2025 Hamburg Süd was also deleted from the commercial register. So to remember this company, this memorial cruise was held. We've just sailed past the Nord-Ostsee Canal, the Kiel Canal, and that means we're now actually reaching the River Elbe. The river is gonna get smaller, we're gonna see the shoreline on both sides, so there's a bit more to see than just water. Of course, there are always some big and interesting ships passing by, coming from the port of Hamburg, and we're now heading there. And of course, as I said, there was a little bit of entertainment, but it takes around 7 hours to go from Cuxhaven to Hamburg with the Cap San Diego, so there's a lot of time for yourself. So either you bring some friends with you and you have just a great time, or if you're traveling on your own, you can also bring a good book or just enjoy the landscape, enjoy sailing on an old freight ship. So of course there are many things to do, but just be aware you have a lot of time for yourself on the ship as well. Here we are sailing past the ferry between Glückstadt and Cuxhaven, and as you can see there are a lot of cars in the background, as they were running with only 3 instead of 4 ferries, so there were long queues. But those passengers that were on this ferry, they were very lucky to see the Cap San Diego passing by them in close distance. As I said, only 10 cruises each year, so it is a rare sight to see the Cap San Diego in operation. If you also want to do a cruise on the Cap San Diego, you have to book well in advance, as there are only 10 trips each year, around 10 trips each year to Cuxhaven, Bremerhaven or Kiel, and there's a quite high demand. I would recommend book as early as possible to make sure that you're actually gonna get a ticket, because it is an absolutely amazing experience. As I said, we've also met many other ships. Some of them were also greeting us and we were greeting them, and now we're gonna listen to the horns of the Cap San Diego and the other ship. One thing you also need to think about when going on a cruise with the Cap San Diego is that it is a freight ship, so of course it doesn't have a high passenger capacity. That means that there are not enough seats for all passengers on the ship, and they put some extra seats on the ship, but those seats are in the sun, as there's not that much shadow on a freight ship. That should be obvious, but I just want to point it out because it's quite important to remember, because I forgot to put sunscreen on and I got a very bad sunburn after 7 hours in the sun. And if you're coming on board and you're gonna find a nice seat, go there and keep it, because the very nice seats like I luckily got after lunch, they are quite rare to get. There are not that much good seats available where you have a fantastic view, and if you even get one in the shadow, make sure to keep it because it's quite rare to get such a good seat. Of course, that's a bit easier if you're not traveling on your own, because as soon as you're leaving your seat, it will be taken by someone else. But if you stay in a group, maybe it's a bit easier then.
We're now slowly approaching the port of Hamburg. We can see the cranes of the port in the background, and we're reaching the Schiffsbegrüßungsanlage, which means ship greeting station. At the station, the national anthem of the country in which each ship is registered is played when the ship is sailing past. As the Cap San Diego is registered in Germany, we heard the German anthem, and that means that we're now actually approaching the port of Hamburg. We're now coming to the most spectacular part of the cruise. Of course, it's the highlight of the cruise to go into the port of Hamburg, the home port of the Cap San Diego. First, we are sailing past the Airbus airport of Hamburg-Finkenwerder, and there you can see a lot of planes being constructed, being repaired, being renovated, so that's quite interesting. Before that, we're sailing past the beaches of the Elbe. You can also swim in the Elbe river, and now we're approaching the Airbus airport, so you can see there are already a lot of planes inside. In the meantime, we changed our pilot for the second time. The Elbe pilot was replaced by the Hamburg port pilot, just coming on board now. Here we can see some more planes, and then something quite rare happened. We were very lucky to be here exactly at the right time. We got to see the start of a Beluga Airbus. This is the freight plane of Airbus that is transporting parts of airplanes between the factories of Airbus. It's a quite rare plane, only 6 of them have been built. You can see them here in Hamburg, of course, quite frequently, but still you need to be quite lucky to see the start or the landing of this plane. So of course I was quite happy to be able to see it. And here we can see the predecessor of the Beluga. This plane is called the Guppy, and now we're approaching Hamburg. We can see the Elbphilharmonie in the background, and we're now going past the port. And of course, we greeted Hamburg as it should be with our ship's horn, and of course we're gonna listen to it now. Here in the background we can see the Köhlbrand Bridge, very famous bridge in the port of Hamburg, very beautiful bridge. And then our 2 tugs arrived. They're gonna help us now going to our docking location. To reach our docking location we have to go past it, also past the Elbphilharmonie, turning around, then going again past our docking location, and then reaching it backwards because we can only moor at the port side of the ship, as the Cap San Diego is not moored with ropes but with 2 metal clumps that are holding the ship in position onto dolphins, so that with a change of the tide in Hamburg the ship is always secured. But we only have the clumps on the port side, and therefore we have to turn around now, and then we're going backwards into our docking location at the Landungsbrücken. As the Cap San Diego only has 1 propeller and 1 engine, of course we're gonna need the tugs. We have a lot of power. The ship has 11,650 horsepower, but only 1 propeller, 1 rudder, and therefore it's not as easy to navigate such a ship than a new ship that has those assipods, gondolas that can be turned 360 degrees. Now the Cap San Diego only has this 1 propeller, and with that now has to go into this tiny gap here. You can see the sailing ship Rigmas with a green livery in the background, and here on the right side you can see our docking location, and that's the small gap that we have to go into now. So of course we're gonna need the tugs. Here we can also now see it in a time-lapse, ship going into this very tiny gap. That was very, very spectacular. Only a few meters left of space there. Very, very spectacular maneuver. My camera gave up, the battery was empty, so I had to change for the GoPro on the last meters, but with this wide angle we can even see it a bit better how tight actually the docking location is. There is not much space. It was very spectacular. Of course the tugs were well needed, but for the last centimeters to actually put the ship with its clamps on the dolphins, the captain has to maneuver it by himself, going forwards and backwards by a few centimeters only. There's just a few centimeters left of space. As you can see here, you can see the clamps and the dolphins. So that was very spectacular. And then with our own cranes, we attached the gangway. This also took a while because it's not a standard gangway. It's a quite heavy one because it's the only connection of the museum and the hotel to the port of Hamburg. So therefore it has to be a very strong gangway. So it took a while, and then it was time to say goodbye to the Cap San Diego, and the silhouette of the port of Hamburg had its main character back, the Cap San Diego. It was a wonderful cruise, and I'm really happy that I got a chance to travel on this ship, and I can highly recommend it to you to do the same thing. And here we can take a look at Hamburg in the night from my hotel room, and that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Here you can see when the next video will be uploaded and the name of the song. As always, I'd like to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to comment, like, subscribe or share the video link, and I hope to see you in my next video then.